He was truly an entrepreneur. And he challenged us with a simple phrase that not only had the power of clarity, but it had a bit of conviction and significant truth in it. He asked us, what do you want? Success or do you want significance? Success or significance? Well, what does that mean? And what does it mean for you and for me? And particularly as a Christian entrepreneur, how will it affect the way we live, the way we do business, and the way we seek the purposes of God Himself? Hey, that's coming up on some deep learning on today's program of the Christian Entrepreneur Network, the Jesus Entrepreneur. Join with me. I'm Stan Houston right now, and we're in for some significant learning. Indeed, and welcome back. I'm Stan Houston. I'm the founder of the Christian Entrepreneur Network, along with a variety of people who are now joining us. We are launching tcenglobal.org, tcenglobal.org. We'll be connecting with many of you as the long-anticipated vision of our website, our web stage, our continuing radio program here called The Jesus Entrepreneur, and a number of other projects, including a small book which is simply called, Fully Alive. Fully Alive, and it is the prayer and the 7 power principles for life and business for the Christian entrepreneur, and all of those things are upon us, coming to us. And I can't think of a better person to help us begin that kind of thing this day. And that is from a book that really shook many people up, particularly those who were involved in Christian work and business and trying to make those things happen. And as a result, a man named Bob Buford, truly an entrepreneur, came on the scene. And he simply said, halftime might be a significant time in your life, for the second half of your life, and to see if perhaps you can go from success, which you may have achieved, to what you really need to believe and achieve, and that is significance. And so that becomes and became a part of what we need to learn more about today. Well, that wonderful gentleman, Bob Buford, has met his reward, and he has passed on, and the work that he started, called Halftime, is now in new and leading hands. And I took some time to call up the gentleman who is now giving leadership to that organization, and I'm just going to go into what we oftentimes call a little deep learning, and you can hear the conversation as Dean will tell us more about what it might mean to go from success to significance, and perhaps for you in your life and business, it's halftime. Let's see what that's all about. Well, as promised, from time to time, we take a little time out and I shut up. Some of you say, great, Stan, we're glad when you shut up for a while. And we do a little deep learning from other people. And today I have a man who actually works for an organization that had a real impact on my life some time ago. And it obviously had something to do with his life. And so Dean Niewolny, welcome to the Jesus Entrepreneur.
Stan, thanks for having me. Thank you.
Well, I heard about Bob Buford before he became famous.
Yeah.
and obviously, for many people, he has significantly impacted their life. Just like Billy Graham impacted millions of people, I would say that Bob Buford impacted at least thousands, maybe millions too. And you're one of those. So, Dean, you know what we do? We just say, hey, it's your turn in your town, and you're from Dallas, right?
Yeah, I am from Dallas now. I grew up in Wisconsin, but I live in Dallas now.
Okay, it's your turn in Dallas, Texas, and you're on the air, my friend. Tell us your story and help us learn something that might help our lives. Go.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I'll share a little bit of how I ended up at halftime. I grew up in Wisconsin, and we had a great family. We had my mom and dad were always there, and I had two sisters. But we didn't have a lot of wealth. And one of the things that was instilled in me at a very young age was that we would always look at, quote unquote, the folks on the other side of the tracks and how much wealth they had, and look at the Ericksons or look at the Smiths. Mm-hmm. And as a young boy, I remember thinking to myself, you know what, when I grow up, I want to be like the Ericksons and the Smiths.
Sure.
So my dream at a very young age was to be those folks on the other side of the tracks, because, Stan, I thought if I had wealth and I had material possessions and all of those things, that it would bring me happiness and joy. I went through my younger years and started to get into college and then went out into the marketplace. My goal was one thing, and that was, how can I make as much money as possible so I can buy all these toys that supposedly are going to bring me a bunch of happiness?
So you're one of those original show me the money guys, huh?
Show me the money, and I'm one of the originals, you know, the guy with the most toys at the end wins, okay, if you remember that line. So at a young age, when I was 23, I decided to get into the financial services industry, and I went in and started with Merrill Lynch and then worked with a number of financial firms over the next 23 years, and I was successful at doing what I set out to do, and that was to go out and make a lot of money and accumulate material possessions. What was shocking to me was that they didn't bring me joy, and actually they brought me the opposite. They brought me a lot of anxiety and stress and unsettledness more than anything else. And what ended up happening in the middle 1990s is I was introduced to this gentleman named Bob Buford. He was being interviewed at a church I was at. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about this book, Halftime, Going from Success to Significance.
Yes.
I thought to myself, well, that's great for Bob and all his friends, but for me, I want to continue to accumulate things and make money because, again, I thought it would bring me a lot of happiness. I went through a very trying period of life in 1994. I was married and went through a divorce. Yep. And I dedicated my life at that time to Christ through a variety of different introductions. I was reintroduced to Christ, if you will, and attended Willow Creek Community Church up in Chicago.
Sure.
Yeah, and Bill Hybels at the time was interviewing Bob Buford. And like I said, he was talking about this idea of going from success to significance, but I wasn't ready yet. And what I found out over the next few years is that interview with Bob stuck in my mind. This whole idea of figuring out how can I live a life of significance, and really how can I focus on others to make others better and build into others instead of focusing all my time and energy on myself. Well, fast forward to 2006. I was sitting in the 40th floor office building in downtown Chicago in the Mercantile Exchange building, and I was looking out the window thinking, I should be the happiest person on earth. I have a great relationship with Christ. I have a beautiful wife. I have two great kids. I have all these material possessions and stuff. But I finally looked out the window, Stan, and I said, God, there has to be more to life than this. There just has to be more to life than this. And what I realized at that point is I was spending all my time focusing on myself and not focusing on others. And when I look back to that period of time, I call it my season of smoldering discontent.
What a wonderful line.
Yep. Yeah, it just, a lot of men and women want to live this life of success and accumulate material possessions and wealth. And then they get to that point and they're like, is this all there is? I mean, there has to be more to life than this. So that began a journey for me, Stan, in 2006. Ironically, my boss asked if I'd be part of a Bible study, and I said, what are we studying? And he said, we're going to study this book, Halftime. I said, perfect. I heard that gentleman get interviewed. I read the book 2 or 3 times. And at that point, I decided I wanted to figure out what God's plan was for my life as I was moving forward. Mm-hmm. What I found interesting is that Halftime had a program in Dallas, Texas, that you could go through, and I went to that program, and I met Bob Buford, and I said to him, I remember you getting interviewed at Willow Creek, and we had a nice small chat, and then as we went on over the next 2 days, as I continued on in the program, he said a few things that were pretty profound for me. Number one, he said, Dean, it's not going from success to significance. It's really going from success to significance to ultimate surrender. And Stan, I said to myself, surrender. Wow. What in the world does that mean? I'm used to controlling things. I want to do things my way. I'm a type A personality. But surrender, I remember that. The second thing he said is, I believe there's going to be an audit at the end of your life, and there's only going to be 2 questions. Number one, what did you do with Jesus? And I felt really good about that. The second question was, what did you do with the gifts that I've given you? And at that point, he shared Ephesians 2:10. We are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I thought to myself, I'm good with Jesus, but I'm not using my gifts or abilities or talents for anyone other than myself. It's all about me and focusing on myself. So that began a journey for me. And through a variety of different interviews and conversations, I ended up becoming the CEO of the Halftime Institute down in Dallas in 2010. But it began with looking out the window in 2006 and just saying, God, there has to be more to life than this. And then after that, I started spending time in what I now understand to be surrender. And that was, I did a lot of solitude time. And I listened to my personal board of directors, folks that loved me and cared about me. And Stan, through a variety of different conversations, like I said earlier, I ended up, moving down here to Dallas and becoming the CEO of the Halftime Institute in 2010.
Well, that's a fascinating story, and I think a lot of people as a business performance coach, I have found, the kinds of people. I remember part of my own life one time, I had to make a little change in the kind of coaching I did because God kind of said to me in terms of my own coaching, he said, Stan, when it's finally done, are you going to say to me, hey, I made a bunch of blanks rich,
Yeah.
And I said, God, no, that's not what I want to do. I mean, and because I'd helped a lot of people do quite well. I mean, there are people who are more successful than I am, and they say I helped them. But, that is the question is when he finally says, I've given you gifts. Did you use it to make somebody else rich or make somebody else money? I couldn't honestly say that I want to do that.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Stan, if I can just add to that many folks who go through the Halftime program think that you have to leave the marketplace and go into the ministry or the nonprofit world, and that making money is bad and being successful is bad. That's not true.
Okay, now you've hit the point. That's where we need some real wisdom, because that's true. I gotta quit being a financial advisor. I gotta quit being an entrepreneur. I gotta sell my business, and now I gotta become a poor missionary. And you're trying to tell them that may not be so. Tell us more.
Yeah, most people, like I said, do read the book or go through the program and think, I have to make this major life change. And, oh, by the way, if I go through this program or if I make a change, I'm going to end up in Africa. Well, the reality is that very rarely happens. And 60% of men and women that go through the halftime program actually stay exactly where they're at. But their ministry may be right in front of them. We help men and women identify margin around their time, talent, and treasure, and then go and serve in the areas that they're passionate about. But in many cases, their ministry is right in front of them, and I'll give you a quick story. There was a gentleman from a large financial services firm that came to our program, and he was one of the most miserable people I've ever encountered coming through our program. And I finally said to him, why are you so unhappy? And he said, Dean, I've been in the hospital. I've been there for one reason, and that is I thought that I had to give up everything that I loved, my successful job, making money, serving my clients, and become like Mother Teresa and go and serve the poor and have nothing. And he said, I was so miserable that I was clinically depressed and ended up in a hospital. And I said, who told you you had to do that? He said, I just thought you had to give up everything that you loved. I said, absolutely not. I said, if God gives you the gifts and the skills and the ability to make money, that's fantastic. People need money. Nonprofits need money. A lot of people need money. So making money is not necessarily wrong. It's your heart and what are you doing with that money. So this idea of leaving what you love and being successful and having to give all that up just is not accurate. You don't have to do that. But there might be a small course correction. Now, the guy I just mentioned to you that ended up in the hospital, he ended up going back into the financial services world and now serves 1,500 clients through another organization that he joined, and he uses Kingdom Advisors, spiritual principles of investing, to help his clients have a successful financial future. And that is his ministry. That's his clientele. That's his ministry. So you don't have to leave what you love and go and do something dramatic in most cases.
Well, I'm glad that you say that again, and oftentimes I say you have to say it 7 times so we hear it again, but I would really also add to that, and this really adds to you, is I was talking to a younger person. We run the Christian Entrepreneur Network, and we're talking to encourage these young people to, really get involved in the marketplace, that could be one of those cultural domains, the non-religious, oftentimes the non-religious people have taken over all kinds of things from entertainment and education. But the marketplace, we still have a fighting chance at. And this young man said to me, he said, Stan, most of the kids, people I know, they don't go to church anymore. They don't have to, so they don't go to church anymore. He said, they just don't. And he said, they really aren't involved in Christian things, so they don't really run into Christians. But then he said, but you know what? They all have to be in the marketplace. And that's where we're going to connect with them. And he's right.
Yeah, he is absolutely right. I remember when I accepted Christ in 1995. I was in the financial services world at the time. And I thought the natural progression after accepting Christ was that I had to leave the marketplace and go into the ministry or nonprofit world. And I'll remember the pastor's message that pretty much right after I was thinking through that, he said, if everyone leaves the marketplace and goes into the ministry, who will be a light in this dark world? And there is such a need in the marketplace for Christian men and women to serve and be salt and light in the marketplace. It's critical that people stay there, and if God's calling them to do that, of course. So, yeah, I wanted to just share something else, Stan, that I have found interesting or was very helpful for me. And as people are listening to this, I always share with them 3 questions. And the first question I ask when someone comes to me is cost accounting. And the reason I mention cost accounting to someone is because they understand, the business vernacular. But I always ask the person, what is all your winning costing you? It's costing you something. Is it costing you your relationship with your spouse? Is it costing you your relationship with your kids? Is it costing you your health? Is it costing you your faith? What is all your winning costing you? And for me, it was costing me my relationship with my spouse and with my kids. Number two has to do with asset protection, and that it goes this way. What do you have that is priceless? And what are you doing to protect it? What do you have that's priceless, and what are you doing to protect it? For instance, I have a marriage that's priceless, and I have children that are priceless, and I have a faith that's priceless. And what I do every year is I make sure that I make those three things a priority. And at the beginning of the year, date night with my wife and my son's football game and my daughter's dance recitals are put on my calendar before anything else. It's what's priceless. And the third question that I often ask has to do with metrics, and that is, if you were living the perfect life 2 years from now, what would that life look like? Not what would you be doing, but what would that life look like? And for me and for my wife and family, it's that my wife and I are living out our Ephesians 2:10 calling, that we're more in love than we ever have been. Our kids have high self-esteem, that we're healthy in other things. But for you, it may be different. But those three questions get men and women to really start thinking about their life and where they're at. So they're important to think through.
Truly, usually halftime questions, for sure. Hey, Dean, this has been great. We'd like to have you back on a more of a regular basis. Could perhaps that happen from time to time? You've turned into a teacher.
Yeah, I'd love it. I'd love it, Stan. You bet.
Well, first of all, again, thank you for that. And like I always say, tell us something we don't know, and you certainly did that. And I really appreciate those three questions. As I would say to everybody, this is on-demand radio, so you can go back and play it again. And take some thought on those questions. Okay, and they all of a sudden decide they need to talk to the teacher, or they need some help, or they'd like to learn more about halftime. Hey, man, you're in the financial services. You used to pitch people. It's time for your pitch. Let's go.
Well, first of all, if you want to reach out to Halftime, you can go to halftimeinstitute.org, halftimeinstitute.org, and that is our website. Or you can call us at 855-2nd-half, 855-2-ND-half. And you can reach out to any of us, and you can ask for me if you'd like to chat with me. I'll gladly do that. So feel free to reach out to us.
Isn't that something? The CEO says he'll take your call personally. How about that?
I'd love it. I'd love it.
Okay. Hey, Dean, thank you very, very much. We'll be in touch. By the way, all of this comes to you from the Christian Entrepreneur Network, the Jesus Entrepreneur. We're trying to get a whole tribe of them. And perhaps my friend Dean and his colleagues at Halftime can help you make some of those steps to actually live that way, live out your calling, live out your gifts. Thank you very much, Dean. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Stan.
And there you go. As I oftentimes say, you learn more here by accident than most places by design. So that happened today, and thank you, Dean. We really appreciate that. And he's agreed perhaps to be kind of a regular contributor here to help us truly keep pressing on, forgetting what is behind. You know, that kind of past. Now we're into other stages of our life and business. Forgetting what is behind, we look toward the future and we press toward the mark of the high calling of God's significance in our lives. We hopefully will do a bit of that from time to time. I'm Stan Houston. Once again, tcenglobal.org, tcenglobal.org. We hope that you will join us, particularly on the Christian Entrepreneur Network, and this little program simply called We're Hoping to Build a Tribe of Jesus Entrepreneurs Around the World that will impact the marketplace significantly, and hopefully the commercial culture of the world will have at its center someday the very master entrepreneur himself. That's a high calling. Let's see if we can make it happen. Thank you so much. All the best and blessings. We'll be back. Stay in touch. Stay in tune. And why don't you make a contribution yourself? Give me a call, 520-664-7002. Tell me something that you might have that we could use as a contribution to the people in the network. RadioEdge77@gmail.com. RadioEdge77@gmail.com. Best and blessings. Bye for now.